I am High Interrogator Vespera. It has come to my attention that certain historical revisionism, bordering on the heretical, is festering within the noosphere regarding the Arch-Traitor. To cauterize this intellectual poison, I have authorized a full review of the primary pict-slate concerning the fall of the Primarch Horus. Let there be no more doubt. Let there be only the harsh, undeniable truth. The file is designated Visions of a Dark Future. Its thesis: the yoke, psychological dismantling, of the Emperor's once-favored son. Before us, we see the fracture point. A shattered looking-glass reflecting two realities. On the left, Horus Lupercal, War Master of the Imperium, resplendent in his authority, the very image of a noble demigod sworn to the Great Crusade. But observe the reflection on the right. Twisted, corrupted, adorned with the profane sigil of the archenemy, this is the slave to chaos he became, his power armor warped by demonic energies, his soul a hollow echo. The Ruinous Powers did not just offer him power, they showed him carefully constructed lies visions of a future Imperium, where his father, the Emperor, sat upon the golden throne as a silent, decaying god, worshipped by the very fanatics Horus had been taught to despise.
Look at the future you are building, a kennel of dogma and blind faith.
And in his pride, he listened. This single image encapsulates the greatest tragedy and most profound treason in the history of mankind. It is the moment a hero became a monster, a son became a traitor, and a dream of unity was immolated. We will now proceed into the particulars of the data-slate, to understand how even the brightest star can be consumed by darkness. Pay attention. The seeds of heresy are sown in the soil of ambition. The Anathame blade, a weapon of xenos corruption, brought to bear on the moon of Davin. The wound it inflicted upon the War Master was not one of flesh but of destiny. His biology, a masterwork of Imperial science, began its inexorable collapse. In the sterile confines of the Apothecarian, the Legion's finest medicae were rendered impotent. Scanners confirmed the unthinkable, a failure of Horus Lupercal's Laraman cells, followed by systemic hypoxic poisoning. Their science had failed, and so, in their desperation, his command council, the Mournival, turned to forbidden paths. In the torchlit gloom of a Davinite Serpent Lodge, the word-bearer Erebus offered them a debased salvation. We see here his calculated manipulation come to fruition as the priestess Uxshub initiates a foul ritual. Captain Garviel Loken's protests were the last flicker of Imperial loyalty in that cave. Vox fragments record his horror.
This is sorcery. We cannot do this. The War Master would not wish this.
His words were futile. The choice was made. In their fear, the sons of Horus chose damnation for their father. As the priestess began her incantations over the blood-slicked stones, the fate of the galaxy was sealed not by a clash of armies, but by a whisper in the dark. His body was a cage of dying flesh, poisoned by xenos sorcery. Upon the Serpent's Lodge of Davin, traitor priests performed their blasphemy, severing the War Master's spirit from his failing shell. This was no healing ritual, it was an exsanguination of the soul. As Horus Lupercal's physical form lay inert, a wireframe echo on a stone slab, his consciousness was cast into the Immaterium. He ascended through a spiraling wound in reality, a vortex of raw emotion and churning chaos. Within this psychic tempest, the Ruinous Powers constructed a vision for him, what the deluded called the Havola, Axis Mundi. It was a false paradise built from his own memories and pride, a vision of a peaceful future he could create, if only he would listen. This realm, as our doctrines state, is shaped by emotion and home to predatory intelligences, and they were waiting. But in this maelstrom of deceit, Horus was not alone. A guide, cloaked in a familiar and beloved form, would meet him, a phantom sent to exploit every doubt, every fear, and offer the War Master a throne built upon the ashes of his father's Imperium. A Primarch's soul is a fortress. To breach it, the enemy does not use siege engines but memories. For Horus Lupercal, the critical vulnerability was not pride, but love for his fallen sons. The warp knew this, and it fashioned a key from his grief. The key had a name, Hasta Siyanus. once captain of the Sons of Horus 4th Company and the War Master's most trusted confidant before his death on 6319. As Horus lay poisoned and lost in delirium, the architect of his fall, word-bearer's chaplain Erebus, crafted this perfect deception. He presented the Primarch with a ghost, a vision of his favored son returned, offering guidance through the psychic torment. This was not a frontal assault on Horus's will, but a subversion of his heart. The illusion offered reason where there was madness, and hope where there was despair. Only when the path was chosen did the mask slip, revealing the snarling face of the true guide. Erebus himself confessed the method of his grand betrayal.
I came to you in the guise of Sejanus to ease your understanding of what must be done.
This guide of lies offered a path forward, a supposed escape from the pain and confusion. But every step he urged was a step deeper into the snare, leading the War Master toward a fateful decision in the temples of the Serpent Lodge. The Arch-Traitor was shown a future he could not comprehend. Transported by warpcraft to the 41st Millennium, Horus Lupercal witnessed the final bitter fruit of the Great Crusade, an entire galaxy dedicated to the fanatical worship of the Emperor as a divine being. Before him trudged millions of the devout mindless pilgrims and auto-flagellants, whose blood and tears consecrated cobblestones already inscribed with endless prayer. Overseeing this tide of humanity was a new priesthood, a cyborg cleric merged with a brass lectern, broadcasting idolatrous hymns through hovering servo-cherubs. He saw the very architecture of the Imperium reforged into a weapon of morbidity, kilometre-high reliquaries built of gilded bone and parchment-thin flesh, with skull-faced speakers blaring hymns of devotion. The Primarch looked upon this nightmare of godhood, a future built on the ashes of the Imperial Truth, and saw only betrayal. A galaxy of slaves, worshipping a lie. Horus saw this future as a perversion to be prevented at any cost. But the vision was not a warning. It was a weapon, calibrated by the Ruinous Powers to exploit his pride and set him upon the path to heresy. The question, then, is not simply what he saw, but how this corrupted revelation sealed his fate. Horus Lupercal, the War Master, stands within a sanctum of lies. Before him, a vision of the future Imperium's memory, carved in cold marble. A pantheon of 9 loyal sons encircles him. Dawn, Russ, Sanguinius the Khan, all stand immortalized upon plinths of honor. This is the history that will be written by the victors. He searches for his own place, for the tribute due to the Emperor's favored son. But where his own statue should stand, there is only a chasm, an empty plinth shattered into an abyss.
This is your legacy, War Master. Not a name to be cursed, but a void. See how your father repays your loyalty? Total, absolute erasure.
To be faced with one's own damnation, to see the promise of non-existence, for a lesser soul, this would be a moment of repentance. For the War Master, it was a confirmation. If the future held only oblivion, he would make the present burn so brightly that the galaxy itself would be consumed in the pyre. The promise of the Imperial Truth was absolute. A galaxy guided by reason, science and progress, where humanity had, at last, cast aside the crutch of religion. This promise was shown to be a shattered lie. In visions tainted by the Empyrean, the War Master Horus was presented with a new reality. He was shown a future Imperium, not of fraternity, but of subjugation. A galaxy of shrine worlds drowning in blind faith, superstition and stagnation. The Great Crusade was reframed not as a war of liberation, but as a pogrom against rival faiths, to clear the stage for the Emperor's own ascension. He was no savior, but a tyrant, preparing to discard the very armies that conquered the galaxy for him once his godhood was secure. Horus was taught a new catechism. Ignorance and fear create the gods. This revelation, this ultimate hypocrisy, became the fulcrum upon which the galaxy would break.
If the Emperor himself was the greatest liar, then what was loyalty but another chain? And what was rebellion but the ultimate act of truth?
The Himalayan Gene Vaults. Hallowed ground, the Genesis crucible of the Primarchs, hidden from the Imperium at its own dawn. Here, the first and most sacred trust was broken, not by force of arms, but by a vision, a poisoned dart of truth and lies, aimed at the heart of Horus Lupercal. In the depths of this psychic illusion, the War Master walked halls he was never meant to see, Flanked by glowing amniotic tanks, each a cradle for a demigod, he was forced to witness the artificial nature of his existence. The air was cold, sterile, devoid of paternal warmth. It was the laboratory of a scientist, not the sanctum of a father. In the vision, the golden armor of a slain custodian, the Emperor's own guards, lay shattered on the floor, a potent symbol of betrayed oaths. It was a lie crafted to feel like revelation. As the voice of his tempter whispered, Horus looked upon the nascent forms of his brothers and came to a terrible conclusion. We were made to be expendable. We are tools, not sons. This single, corrosive thought was the key that would unlock damnation. The wound inflicted in this spectral vault would never heal. Convinced of his own disposability and his father's tyranny, Horus now possessed the moral justification he required. The next step was not to question the future, but to seize it by force. The genesis of the Primarchs is not a tale of pure science, but a festering wound of cosmic debt, a truth whispered by the arch-heretic Erebus, a poison he called the stolen fire. He claimed our Emperor's crowning achievement was built upon a lie. According to the blasphemous scriptures recovered from the word-bearers, the master of mankind journeyed into the Immaterium itself. This was the first step, the bargain. He did not conquer the Empyrean. He parleyed with the entities of the warp, making a pact for the power to create life unlike any other. The second step was the theft. Returning to his laboratories deep beneath the soil of terror, he took this raw, primordial energy, this stolen fire, and poured it into 20 genetically engineered biological vessels. But the Emperor is a master of deceit. The betrayal, the third step, saw him renege on his pact, hoarding the power and shielding his nascent creations. He thought he could outwit gods. The final step was their reply, the retribution. The Ruinous Powers do not forgive a broken deal. A warp vortex tore through the Emperor's sanctum, not to destroy the infant demigods, but to scatter them across the galaxy, to reclaim what was owed by twisting them to their own dark designs. And so the seeds of heresy were not merely planted in the hearts of men, but woven into the very fabric of the demigods meant to be our saviors. Each infant, cast into the void, became a pawn in a game far older than the Imperium itself, their new homes destined to shape them into the very weapons that would be turned against their father. A maelstrom of raw Immaterium erupts within the Emperor's most secret laboratory. This was not an assault of steel, but a targeted strike by the great enemy, aimed at the very heart of the nascent Imperium and its 20 nascent hopes. The gestation pods, cradles of demigods, are torn from their moorings by the warp's foul energies. In that frozen moment, the master of mankind appears a giant of gold and psychic fire. Time itself halts at his command. He gazes upon the chaos, his mind a nexus of impossible calculation, weighing futures in an instant. His focus finds one pod in particular, that of the future Warmaster Horus. He sees the variables, he sees the potential for ruin, and the necessity of sacrifice. As one of his own guards falls to his knees in despair, the Emperor makes his choice. He turns, and he allows it to happen. This act was not a failure of power, but the first move in a galactic war of which this was merely the opening salvo. The loss was deemed acceptable. The board was now the entire galaxy, and the game would be played with suns raised not in the light of terror, but in darkness. Examine the data. The Primarchs were a project with a defined life cycle. Their purpose was war, their value was utility, and their fate was obsolescence. Their origin was a high occult investment, forged in forbidden arts beneath the soil of terror itself, and tainted by the warp from their very inception. For 2 centuries during the Great Crusade, they functioned at peak efficiency biological weapons unleashed to bring the Imperial Truth to a benighted galaxy. This was their zenith, their period of maximum utility, but the plan never accounted for permanence. Once their task was complete, the age of warriors was to end, the age of administrators, of shrine worlds, and a divine cult was to begin. The tools would be erased. The Emperor himself confirmed this grim calculus to the Arch-Traitor.
You were a weapon, Horus. A weapon to be cast aside once blunted and past all usefulness.
Such was the design. A clean, cold disposal of assets that had served their function. But a thinking blade develops its own edge, and a sentient weapon develops its own will. The master of mankind's greatest error was not in forging these tools, but in believing they would submit meekly to being unmade. The illusion shatters. With reckless sorcery, the Primarch Magnus the Red cast his astral form across the void, burning the souls of his own servants as psychic fuel. His intent? To warn the War Master Horus. Before the nascent traitor stood a phantom, a shade wearing the face of the honored dead, Hasta Sejanus. This was the Interloper, a lie sent to poison a Primarch's soul. Magnus attacked this psychic deception, his raw power cracking the facade. Yet the true manipulator, the demon within, was beyond his reach, taunting him from the depths of the vision. Its words echo through the ages of heresy.
You are too far away, Magnus. Your powers cannot reach me here.
In that moment, Magnus unmasked the puppet but not the master. His desperate intervention failed. Thwarted by the subtle poisons of the warp, the Crimson King would soon resort to a far more direct and catastrophic warning. The battle for the galaxy was not first fought with bolt gun and chainsword. It was fought here in the ravaged soul of the War Master, where two futures collided for the damnation or salvation of mankind. On one path, a projection of Magnus the Red, a figure of faith and loyalty, argued that the future was not yet set. His psychic voice pleaded, warning Horus that the warp is a realm of lies and predators. He urged his brother not to break his oaths, to maintain faith in their father's grand design. But countering this was the Serpent, Erebus, an avatar of power and survival. The Dark Apostle admitted his deceptions, but insisted the visions he conjured were an absolute future should the Emperor's tyranny not be stopped. He revealed the final heresy that the Primarch Lorgar had already pledged himself to the gods. Then came the offer. Horus would be given the power to rule as the true master of mankind. Faced with two conflicting destinies, one of fealty, the other of absolute power, the War Master's soul hung in the balance. In the Empyrean storm of his own mind, Horus Lupercal made his choice, and the galaxy would burn for it. Three pressures sought to break the War Master's will. Each was a heresy in its own right. From above, the perceived apathy of his father. The Emperor, a future of obsolescence and erasure. The fate of all tools once their purpose is served. This was the cold, golden light of Terran tyranny. From the side, his brother Magnus's warning, a demand for blind faith and a silent father, a plea from a psyker already damned by his own hubris, a fractured, tainted plea. And from the abyss, chaos itself made its offer, a promise of agency, of survival, of the ultimate power to unseat a neglectful god. It was a crimson path paved with lies, whispering that he could be a master, not a slave. Horus Lupercal, caught between these forces, saw them not as choices, but as cages. His immense pride, the rot that had festered since Davin, could not abide being a pawn.
I am Horus, and I make my own fate.
This, he believed, was a declaration of independence. In reality, by rejecting fealty and resisting damnation on his own terms, he chose a third path, one that led directly into the arms of the very ruin he sought to master. Attend to this, the final record. Here, in the Serpent Lodge on the demon world of Davin, is the precise moment the Great Crusade died and the Horus heresy was born. All that came before was prelude. All that followed is its bitter, 10,000-year echo. The data-slate is stark. Horus awakens, his physical wounds healed, but his soul irrevocably corrupted. While the Mournival, his most trusted sons, rejoiced in ignorance, the being that wore their Primarch's face was a vessel for ambition and ruin. The dream of unity was shattered, represented by this fractured pict capture. The light of the Emperor's favored sun was extinguished, replaced by a baleful crimson glow, the gaze of a traitor. His new doctrine was not compliance, but damnation, a three-word catechism of treachery. Let the galaxy burn. And in his own words, the scope of his blasphemy was made plain. I will set the Emperor's Imperium ablaze, and from the ashes will arise a new master of mankind. He sought not to correct, but to usurp. Not to reform, but to reign over a kingdom of cinders. Thus, the greatest heresy was conceived, not by a Xenos beast or a distant warlord, but by the Emperor's most beloved son, from a wound of pride and a poison of lies. This is the tragedy that defines our age. The war is eternal, because the enemy was once our brother. This inquisitorial review is concluded. A thought for the day. The brightest light casts the darkest shadow. Subscribe to the archives and comment below on what heresy needs auditing next.